Hello and welcome to another edition of VU Sports Wired. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Max Schneider alongside Simon Gibbs and Bobby Kent. Today we will break down Vanderbilt's upcoming matchup with Missouri after a tough loss to UNLV this past week. Vanderbilt now sits at 1-5. Will have to win 5 of their next 7 games to be able to make it to a bowl game and win a bowl game this season. It's a tough path ahead of the Commodores, and we'll look back at next week. Guys, 34-10 at home against UNLV, a team that Vanderbilt was a 14 to 15 point favorite against, and they lose this game in really terrible fashion. I mean, I'll start. Just what did you see this week? What went wrong?
There was so little that went right that I just want to get that out of the way. Start with the only thing that went right, and it was Keyshawn Vaughn. 15 carries for 140 yards and a touchdown, 193 all-purpose yards. He moved into 10th all-time rushing yards for the Vanderbilt Commodore football program. He's got over 1,800 yards in 18 games played. Despite the transfer, he was a smooth transition into the program, and he barely even started all the games last year. So to think of how many yards he could have potentially put up, if he were a 4-year player here is incredible. But regardless, hats off to Vaughn, another great performance. His 193 yards made up pretty much the entire Commodore offense, considering they had 306 all-purpose yards. That is pathetic. And I think that moving forward, especially against a team like Mizzou with a stout defensive front, 2 315-pound monsters up the middle, you're not going to be able to run it with Keyshawn Vaughn every time. And if the passing game is anywhere near as bad as it was this past week, they're in for a long game. And secondly, the defense was horrendous. I'll let Bobby get to it, I'll let you get to it, but the secondary was bad. They weren't rushing the quarterback. I mean, this is a true freshman out there who ranks 118th in the country in QBR, even after he went off against Vanderbilt, which by going off, I mean, he only had to throw the ball 16 times to do his job. But regardless, it was a poor performance by the Commodores, and I can feel my seat warming up right now in
your proverbial hot
Yeah,
seat.
exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. It was a horrible showing. I mean, another thing to say, a good thing would probably be that first drive in which Riley Neal looked pretty sharp. I mean, he went, 4 for 7, 72 yards, and marched down the field. But after that, that was our only lead of the game. So it wasn't very strong. And also the defense, the big play, they let up the big play again. That's been a theme in the last couple games. A 63-yard touchdown on a busted coverage. I mean, they had another drive without chunk plays of 3 plays of 15 yards plus. It's just this defense is not taking the right angles of the ball. It cannot sort of get it together at this point, and it's really frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's troubling. And you talked about Kenyon Oblad having to only throw the ball 16 times. What Oblad did in this game is exactly what Vanderbilt has been looking for Riley Neal all season.
Nothing special.
He managed the game.
Yes.
He didn't do anything special. He made the easy throws down the field that he was tasked with making, and he let the run game dictate the job. I mean, this is the kind of performance you wanted from Riley Neal, and it doesn't take extreme arm strength. It doesn't take precision passing. It doesn't take some sort of level of mobility that Neal doesn't have. It's really just doing his job and managing this game and allowing the run attack to dictate the offense. And it was so kind of refreshing to be able to watch a quarterback be able to do that, a quarterback that really isn't very highly touted the same way that Riley Neal wasn't super highly touted coming out of high school. You expect your grad transfer quarterback in his 5th year of college football to be able to do that. And that was a big part of the difference in this game, is that Oblad did his job. He wasn't asked to do much, but he did his job. And Neal really did it. And Neal threw one of those "what were you doing" interceptions again. I mean, there's
First
one a
one
game.
in a few weeks, though.
Yeah.
It almost feels like there's one a game because when they're so little good, to offset the bad, it just feels like it's bad after bad after bad. And that's what we saw. I mean, it's crazy to believe that Vaughn rushed 15 times for 140 yards, averaged 9 yards a carry, and this team still got blown out by 24 points. You should never have that level of success on the ground and lose by as much as this team did.
It's crazy that Vaughn had 1 reception for 53 yards and was the Commodores' leading receiver by a long shot. Next receiver had 36 yards, and then after that, we didn't have a single with 10-plus yards. I mean, Pinckney, again, put up almost nothing, and I don't even blame him at this point. And it's an embarrassment for the Commodore offense, who's facing as I mentioned before, a really good Missouri defense, which has allowed 95 points through 6 games. Now, 37 of those came off a Wyoming game, which I think confused everyone in the country. And you compare those 95 points to the Commodore defense, which has allowed 227 points in just as long.
Jeez.
I think this could be a really long day for the Commodores. And unlike the LSUs of the world or the Georgias of the world, Mizzou's not going to take their foot off the gas. They're going to keep going and keep scoring so long as Vanderbilt lets them. So this defense must stiffen up next week.
Also, you're going against Kelly Bryant.
Yeah.
And to add, insult to injury, he's very accurate. He's completed 65% of his completion or passes this year. He's only thrown 4 interceptions, so he's not going to turn the ball over. And for a defense that hasn't really forced many turnovers this year, they're going to be even harder to come by. And also, they have a stud running back, just in the sense that we have Keyshawn Vaughn. They have Larry Roundtree. He almost has 600 yards this year and 7 touchdowns. So that's going to be hard for the defense to stop, and it's going to be a long day for the Commodores.
Yep, I mean, one just interesting point with this game. Missouri's one loss this season came to Wyoming. UNLV lost 53-17 to Wyoming. So Vanderbilt has two games sandwiched between two teams that lost to Wyoming. Didn't think Wyoming would even be a talking point with this team. But I agree, Larry Roundtree's the one you have to stop. And I know Kelly Bryant's the big name. I know Kelly Bryant comes from the big program in Clemson. I know he's played in big games. But he almost has to be an afterthought in this game, because if you can't stop Roundtree, you can't do anything. And that's what we saw with Ole Miss. All the talk leading up to it was the freshman quarterback. They have to make him throw the ball. They have to make him make plays. And frankly, they didn't have to make him make plays. The same way they didn't have to make Oblad make very many plays this week. Because if the run game is as strong as it has been the past couple weeks against this Vanderbilt defense, then Kelly Bryant's going to have a walk in the park. And that's the troubling part, is that Roundtree is a much better running back than anyone Vanderbilt has faced leading back to week 1.
Yeah.
Against DeAndre Swift.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the second most talented running back they've faced all season, and everybody else has run all over them. There's no reason to believe Roundtree doesn't do the same. So if Derek Mason's not up late at night, or Jason Tarver's not up late at night worried about Larry Roundtree, they should be, because he's going to cause a problem if they don't have a game plan to stop him, and him first and foremost. And right now, I don't think there's any reason to believe that they will have that game plan.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And you talked about how you want to force Kelly Bryant to make that play, take away the run game. In previous years, we've seen a completely different looking, Mizzou offense, where they're able to just rely on Drew Lock, and Drew Lock will make those plays. But nowadays, we see a well more balanced attack, and I think they could attack the Commodores from all angles, which is really frightening, because in each game, it seems like there's a new glaring weakness in this defense, whether it's the secondary, whether it's the tackling, or the defensive front even. So, I mean, this defense is going to really have to tighten up as they look to take away all options, not just the passing game.
Yep, absolutely. Vanderbilt takes on Missouri this week at 3 p.m. After a 1-5 start to the season, they really need to get back into the win column this week. Moving from football to the soccer pitch, Vanderbilt this past week with a 0-0 draw against South Carolina, following up a 2-1 win against Missouri, a great comeback win that featured goals from Layla Azari and Haley Hopkins. Guys, soccer is back in the driver's seat. 3 straight unbeaten now.
Yeah.
2 of those with wins, and then one, a 0-0 draw against the top 10 team in the country.
On the road. In double overtime.
Exactly. And you
on
have to be
3 days
thrilled
of rest.
about what you saw from your goalkeepers, from
Absolutely.
your defense, and then the games before Haley Hopkins finally gets back into the scoring column. That's big for this team. I mean, moving forward, can this team make the next big jump and really contend for an SEC title again?
Max, I think this is everything we could have asked to see from this team. We knew that, obviously, a 0-0 tie isn't the best case scenario. They went into that game hoping to win. But the way they fought for 90-plus minutes in double overtime on the road on 3 days of rest is not something to be taken lightly. This is now a team that is back in the driver's seat. This is a team that is perennially contending with the best teams in potentially the best conference in the country. And I look for them to keep that going moving forward. It's going to be about revitalizing, getting some energy, because they did just come off a very quick streak of games. They played 2 games in 3 days, and now they have a 5-day rest before they start their next game against LSU. And this Friday, when they play LSU, it'll be senior day. I think that's the type of energy they need right now. Something to rally behind, something to, give them that little extra, motivation as they go into the game, finally on a few days of rest. And hopefully, if they could get something going against LSU, this team is completely back into the top 25, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. I think going in on the road in a hostile environment and coming out with a 0-0 draw is a very important stepping stone for this team. It also shows, and especially even the last game as well, when they came back down 2-1.
Yeah.
And if you fall behind early, to have that motivation and confidence in your team that you can come back, and especially with 2 goals like that within 15 minutes of each other, that helps a team get a lot more confidence, and that they believe they can come back from any deficit, and that they can make a stretch run down especially in the tournament.
That Layla Azari goal was also incredible. I don't know if it was on purpose, but it was still
Give him the
crazy,
benefit of the doubt.
crazy cross into the top shelf.
Absolutely. Vanderbilt soccer will take on LSU this Friday at the Vanderbilt Soccer Complex. This team's on a run, but they still have some work to do if they want to reach the top of the SEC ladder. Texas A&M and South Carolina still very much the cream of the crop in this conference, but Vanderbilt proved they are with a 0-0 draw against South Carolina. We'll see if they can continue that this week against LSU and beyond. So for all of us here at VU Sports Wired, from Bobby Kent, from Simon Gibbs, I'm Max Schneider saying thank you so much for watching. We will see you next week for more Vanderbilt sports news.